What is up, down, and sideways, all you beautiful individuals? It is another Epic League Unlocked. My name is Eric, flying Han Solo. On today's episode, you know how it goes as we get maybe potential future playoff matchups in the LPL. We had the finale of what is, I guess, what you would call the regular season for Split 3. This was a couple marquee matchups that were delayed from some extreme weather events earlier over in China, and that is highlighted by the IG versus BLG showdown, which now, again, being at the very end of the regular season, we had the second seed for playoffs fully on the line. Both squads 10-3 heading into this one. If you've been following the LPL at all this split, you know that IG 10 times over any other squad has had the craziest endings and moments in most of their series throughout the split, and it was more of the same today in the matchup against BLG, their rivals, if you will. They're not really rivals, but I digress. It was start to finish insane. Peaked in game 2, but we'll go through the first game first because we still had some intriguing back and forth. You had a lot of different good engages from both BLG and IG. The Shy looks more and more comfortable on the Rumble pick, and as we've alluded to, the Shy's dying a little bit less often, but even this first game, as I mentioned, was very back and forth. The different flanks from both squads and engages across different angles was very impressive, as it looked like BLG was going to take this game back as a couple players got very fed there, and then it was IG catching out the top half of the map for BLG, so they kind of forced this 3v5 around Baron, and eventually BLG in his way who's able to secure it, even with what seemed like a kind of early smite. But this 3v5 as Bin TPs in becomes a 4v5, and then it looks like it's going to be BLG who comes away with it, but that's a Unara for Gala, who plays it to pixel perfect perfection to take down the Rakan, and then even if Mako just lands that Alistair combo, this is probably a full turnaround for Gala as he skates in for the triple to kill Elk, but it is Knight who ends up cleaning up. But it was the Baron that went over to IG, so eventually they're able to cruise, not cruise control, but snowball the game out, as you see, as they're eventually going to hit the Nexus. They still have about 15 seconds left on that Baron buff, so really completely not even snowball the game, but take back control and are able to get a few picks with the advantage of just having that Baron buff, and eventually close it out to take a 1-0 lead over BLG. And listen, that's an exciting back and forth hype matchup that is, you would put an A+ kind of matchup in terms of the LPL setting. But game 2 in this series takes things to a completely new level. First, you had people predicting flashes on the Vi out of way and then flashing in the wrong direction. There were some wacky moments early on, but there was a lot to get through. So we go right into 20 minutes after it looks like BLG maybe going to run away with about a 2K gold lead, and then IG doing what IG does, and that's kind of finding, I'm not going to say miracle, that's a little bit dramatic, but come from behind team fights. That was a 3-man shockwave out of Rookie, followed up by a nice engage by Mako. Or re-engage. You're going to see the Shy on the Mordekaiser in this game would obviously end up being incredibly pivotal, but this is a near ace over to IG, and I think they even end up cleaning up Bin Sion at the end of that to make it a clean ace. And then we cue the insane extended team fights, and on multiple fronts, Mako's flashing over to completely whiff the Pot Blossom. The Shy is in the Death Realm trying to do some 1v1ing, and then just look at Gala on the Sivir in the pit, flashes over after he already had the fadeaway boomerang to get a triple, and then he's cleaning up Knight as well for the Quadra. Not quite a penta, so he's not even excited about it. And then that play, you saw the Shy stick the realm, the Death Realm on to Shadow so that he couldn't get the Infernal Soul, and then we pivot a little bit later to this fight where Gala, first off, whiffed his flash over the wall, in case you missed that one. The Shy does get a kill over there, but the distraction that he's doing, because IG has already kind of definitively lost this fight with Rookie going down, but watch the Sivir on the side. First, the Shy's doing distract duty, and then Mako's going to do some distracting on the Nico, but Sivir is pumping the DPS on the Dragon on the side. Obviously, Shadow doesn't have Smite, so again, that's back-to-back Dragons. That IG is denying the soul over to BLG, even though Gala does end up going down there and control kind of goes back into the BLG favor. It doesn't matter because they don't have Infernal Soul that never come from behind win, and eventually IG finds that right team fight as the Shy takes a whole bunch of damage, and yet again, not a replay, different area, it's another quadra kill for Gala, and this time, oh my goodness, it's not a penta, but yeah, man is smiling. That is the biggest smile Gala has probably ever had in a stage game. On does his best to deny the minions, and he does a pretty good job because this gets incredibly close on the Nexus, and Gala is obviously enemy number one. He goes down, but the Shy throws Elk in the Death Realm and beats down the Nexus. You might say, why did you select Elk to be the guy? Because he could actually kill you, but he didn't. It works out. The Shy's having a great time. Gala's actually laughing. IG in the most dramatic way possible. We've seen them lose games they have absolutely no business winning, Nexus races and backdoors to win games. This is another one that probably comes down to the final auto attack or two. The Shy probably gets one more auto attack after he hits the Nexus before he's going to die. So obviously incredibly close to even win that game. And IG, man, they are absolutely, we throw around cardiac kids very often with a lot of different squads. This is the only team that actually lives up to that, and you feel like they are the cardiac kids because they have these absolutely insane endings. And Gala, by the way, who picked up player of the match for that second game, obviously going 13-3, 61,000 damage, 39% of his team's damage in that game too. He doubled up almost every player on BLG in terms of damage done. So to me now, post-regular season, Gala is right behind Jackie Love in terms of, you might even put him ahead of Jackie Love in terms of best performing AD carry within the LPL right now, and no better way to wrap up that regular season than with this matchup. I know we did have a Weibo JDG series that also happened on the day, but we're going to ignore that, pretend that didn't really happen because it was pretty meaningless in terms of standings, and we got to see, it's not even in the same conversation as this BLG and IG one, as the Shy continues to level up and look much more, playing carry champions. Rookie had a pretty solid Orianna showing, feeling very good about IG heading into these playoffs, and now we actually have some of these playoff matchups. Again, this new format is where the two different groups, we're going to have them merge. So we have the play-in stage. I believe that's the terminology that the LPL and LCK are both using. But on the LPL side, you've got some interesting matchups. FPX versus NIP. NIP were the most dominant team in that second tier group. So I'm expecting NIP to take down Fun Plus Phoenix. That's maybe the main Rise group that you can expect to, or Nirvana group. That's what it is for LPL. I finally learned it, guys. Nirvana group versus Legend group. NIP versus FPX, I see that going their way. World Elite versus EDG is the next close one, but I think World Elite's actually better than their record dictates, and they just kind of pumped AL, so I think WE holds their own against EDG. These are not double elim, by the way. One single best of 5 to qualify for that main stage. Weibo should get things done against Ultra Prime. JDG versus LGD. You would think JDG should handle LGD, but I have zero confidence in them right now, and I would not be shocked if LGD does come away with the win, even though Scout did actually have a good game against Weibo in their last series. But really, the main one I expect to be a Nirvana group member getting through is that NIP versus FPX matchup. Obviously, who knows what could happen in the LPL, especially these teams. They're so used to going against the same 4, 5, 6 teams over and over and over again. They haven't had any of these matchups, so some fresh faces to match up on the Rift. So we'll see how things play out to kick things off in that regular season in the LPL. Still have some action to get through in the LCK before we're heading towards playoffs. And it was, do we have this KT momentum going after taking down T1? Can they carry it over to go against Gen G? Wow, easy matchup next to go against. And maybe there were moments in game one because, this whole series really is a case in point, to me at least, of the patience and just calmness that you see out of Gen G, because they have a pretty decent lead in this first game in their matchup. And KT, credit where credit's due. First off, we'll get to a lot of these Bard ulti whiffs that we got out of Peter, but Cuz comes in to steal the Otacon that Gen G are the ones started, even though he gets incredibly low health. Is going to get popped afterwards, but he flash chomps in to get the kill, even though he goes down afterwards. It doesn't matter because he got that Otacon, and that kind of keeps things alive for KT. They end up getting a couple of kills afterwards, even though Duro and Canyon end up escaping. It's fine. Now we're contesting for the Hextech Soul. Whoop, there goes another Bard ulti that hits absolutely nobody. No steal on this one, so the Hextech Soul. Again, Gen G goes on the back foot, and they just calmly kind of out-muscle and bully KT off of that Hextech Soul. Cuz then comes back and steals a Baron this time from Gen G, and what do? Do they panic? Do they overreact whatsoever? No, this was a pretty nice one from Cuz. He kind of just walks in. There's really no contest, but KT gets the Baron to kind of steal things. Whoop, another Bard ulti whiff. Thank you, Peter, and he gets blown up afterwards. That ain't Kyria piloted Mr. Bard in the bot lane. So now it's immediately a 5v4 for Gen G. But again, KT is the one who got Baron, and that really didn't amount to much because Gen G can just play so patiently and so reactionary. They're almost daring or forcing the opposition to make a play that's kind of a back-breaking one, and then all they do is wait for one single mistake, like the third whiffed Bard ulti of the day. Somebody steps a little bit too far forward. It's perfect on this one, and despite some heroic efforts from BDD on the rise, flashing out almost 2-tap in Chovy, but he's not quite able to do it. He does kind of have to step in 1v4, is unable to do it, and then the rest of Gen G, Rulers flash it over for a little bit of cleanup. Cuz eventually going to get blown up with that Elder Dragon buff, and Gen G just turn things around, close it out from there. So despite 2 huge objective steals from Cuz to get them into this game or steal a game from Gen G, they don't panic whatsoever. They just sit back and wait and say, okay, you've got the advantage, or should have the advantage with these huge buffs. Let's see what you can do. That's all you got. Okay, no problem. Gen G closes things out, and then they roll into game 2 with, you can call it momentum. You can call it whatever you want. You can call KT being a little bit tilted, because that's maybe what it looks like. And game 2 is all about the guy who we don't highlight as often on Gen G, and that is Mr. Keen in the top lane. And it's not one of his patented carry top laners that he's taken over with. It is the Scion, the tank Scion. Outside of the Shy or Baus, you'll never see a better Scion highlight than what we get out of Keen. Those are some big shoes to be fancy footing on, but that's exactly what he does against BDD on one of these coveted picks. Look at the movement here for him to dodge the EQ. He gets Charm there, but he flashes the second half of the Orb of Deception, and then he's going to just, he's very tanky. He's going to dodge the second half of it yet again, even get the ulti to secure the kill for himself. So nice. Let's watch it twice. Boy Keen, look how cool he is. I think afterwards all he says is, nice, in the calmest way possible, channeling his inner Gala and giving absolutely no reaction. But that was the main highlight of this game. This was not nearly as close as the first game. There weren't any big objective steals coming out of Cuz. It was more normal business as usual for Gen G as they casually steamroll their way. That's Doc Dom's best opportunity to do anything on the Yunara. He just never had any angle to actually do any DPS in any of these team fights. And check out how Gen G closes out this game, by the way. I'm not going to call it disrespect. It's maybe some KDA farming. Gen G needs some better stats. They don't look dominant enough, but they're chasing everybody around the map. The Yunara and BDD unable to actually back. Finally, the Ahri does get back. Yunara's still running around, and Gen G lets the minions do their dirty work for them to close out the Nexus, as it's yet another 2-0 in the way of Gen G. And oh man, it's 27-1 now. These guys have been on an absolute tear, continue to be on an absolute tear, but more importantly, on the KT side of things, we do see them coming crashing back to earth a little bit. And is it really crashing back to earth? Gen G's in another planet right now, the level that they're playing at, so KT should still have some confidence going forward, if you're asking me, because mainly of that T1 series that they got a big win against, but it's tough tough for them to be matched up against all these guys. They're waiting to have some easier matchups to warm up into playoffs, but the saga that is Gen G continues. But I mean, this series really was a one-game set because KT looked real rough in that second game, especially Perfect, and we already talked about those Peter Bard plays in the first game. And if you don't have all 5 players playing at a high level, the truth is you have absolutely no chance of beating Gen G, and that was the case in point that KT suffered throughout this series. After not even a hiatus, I said hiatus, but weak matchups for the LTA. We get what they're dubbing a super week. To me, I would just call it, well, it's playoffs. Actually having 3 days makes sense when you're in the early round of playoffs, which means it's not just the losers bracket. Yes, we will get a lot more of these actually intriguing matchups when you're talking about the winners bracket of Shopify versus FlyQuest, also TL 100 Thieves, C9 versus Disguised. It's really the remaining 6 teams. And remember, when you get cut down to 8 from 10 to 8, everybody made the playoffs this year, so whatever format you want to talk about here for the LTA. But when you look at specifically, if you look at Shopify versus FlyQuest, remember both these squads are undefeated, 4-0. FlyQuest are like proper undefeated, haven't dropped a single game. Shopify obviously went to 5 games against Cloud9 in that upset victory, but the FlyQuest numbers, listen, they're favorites for a reason. They have some nutty numbers across the board. As a team, they are first in the LTA for split 3 in Baron percentage, gold differential at 15, team kill death ratio, feat of strength percentage, and they have lost the least amount of towers per game, 2.4 by the way. Less than 3 turrets lost per game on average. They don't even lose all 3 outer turrets on average in the 11 games that they have played so far this split, which is absolutely insane. I am excited to see this matchup. I'm excited to see if Shopify really can step into the shoes that we thought Cloud9 were going to fill. I don't actually see it happening, especially because I think the main strength of Shopify is that bot lane. When you look at B-Boy, this guy has some of the best numbers among all AD carries. Anytime you have the highest damage percentage and kill participation for an AD carry, you know that this guy is the integral member of your squad. And the reason I think it's even less likely that Shopify gets an upset when B-Boy is your main strength, even in the laning phase, when you look at that first blood percentage, is because you're going up opposite Masu and Busio, who are maybe the premier laning duo of bot laners in the LTA, and I feel like Masu plays better the higher stakes the match are. He has some, pedestrian by his standard games in the regular season, but as playoffs heat up and at international events, we see him locked in and play at such a high level. I don't see the bot lane being an advantage for Shopify, so really the only angle they get this big upset against FlyQuest is maybe Fudge gets in the brain of Bwipo after Bwipo called him the worst top laner a couple splits ago. But I don't really even see that happening. I'd be surprised if this goes to 5. I'll give Shopify, I'll give him a game. I'll give him a 3-1 in this one. But the other matchups seem a little more intriguing. When you look at 100 Thieves versus Team Liquid, I believe this is the only matchup of the 3 that they actually played in Split 3, because obviously Shopify and FlyQuest were on opposite groups, but 100 Thieves and TL played way back in week 1. It was Sniper obviously still starting, and this is kind of a thrown game 1 out of 100 Thieves, and FBI's maybe worst series as a professional player, so a lot of things were not the same for 100 Thieves. This is a different looking squad since Dokla joined, and FBI has been much better than that week 1 series, so expected to be closer than that first matchup. Still skewed to the side of Team Liquid for sure. Impact actually had one of his best series in that first matchup against Sniper, but Dokla's a different beast, so it's close. I think this one can absolutely go the distance, can go 5 games, and not quite a toss-up. I'm still going to say 60-40 in the favor of Team Liquid, but that's assuming APA plays well, because APA versus Quid can be a gargantuan mismatch to the side of 100 Thieves if APA is not playing super well, and we have seen more dud series than stud series out of Mr. Always Plan Ahead in that mid lane. So they need a step up from him specifically if Team Liquid want to make any kind of noise in these playoffs. The Cloud9 versus Disguise series is fun. I'm so glad DSG actually got to win a playoff series, extend their season, but really the only question going into this is what is the mental state of the Cloud9 roster after that Shopify loss, after the history, especially last year, of, let's face it, kind of choking away a spot at the World Championship when they lost to 100 Thieves. This team have looked so dominant at times and have clearly been the second best team in the LTA for the majority of the year. So losing to Shopify and one thing to go to losers is okay. That's acceptable. Losing to DSG here is maybe absolutely skyrockets to the worst, biggest choke job that Cloud9 has had in a sea of, disappointments over the last couple of years. So assuming they're not too tilted from that Shopify loss, which, let's face it, there were absolutely angles that doesn't even need to go to a Game 5 out of Cloud9, because if they play even close to the regular form, they shouldn't even be dropping a game to Disguised. I think Cloud9, I don't see the disaster path happening. I think Cloud9 bounces back with a swift 3-0 because they have such a veteran core. And listen, Vulcan and Sven were both part of the going back years, obviously Blabber as well, like the 2020 era Cloud9 that missed out on Worlds when they were the perennial favorites to make a deep run. They had dominated multiple splits that year, so they're familiar with not making that World Championship. And you combine that with obviously the two solo laners in Loki and Thanatos, who I think they're just too good to actually choke. They're too good to not absolutely dominate. No offense to the Disguise players, but this should be a massive mismatch. And I think Shopify have a better chance of upsetting FlyQuest than DSG versus Cloud9. And that's with me thinking incredibly high of FlyQuest and not really giving Shopify much of a chance. I'm expecting a 3-0 out of Cloud9, but more importantly, I'm expecting some actually interesting series compared to last weekend. No offense to that loser's bracket, but actually a little bit of offense. But that is it today for League on Mike. My name is Eric. Thank you to all you absolutely stunning individuals for hanging out and supporting as always. And we will catch you on that flippity flip.